the Cybersecurity and Compliance Podcast with Craig Petronella. Learn about the most current IT security threats in ransomware, phishing, business email compromise, cybercrime tactics, cyber heist schemes, social engineering scams, as well as hints and tips from leading professionals to help you prevent hackers from penetrating your network and dropping ransomware or malware payloads. This podcast will arm you with the best info to defend your network against the latest cyber crimes. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And now, here's your host, Craig Petronella.
Welcome, everybody, to another PTG podcast. It's live, so that means it's Monday. We have Craig here today and myself. Oh, and Blake.
Hey.
Blake's here too. Welcome, everybody.
You always forget me.
How could I ever forget you, Blake? I don't think it's possible.
It is Monday, though.
It is Monday.
So you could forget me because it's Monday.
Monday is new computer day today. I'm so excited, you guys. You have no idea.
That's right.
So, Craig, what are we going to talk about today?
Cybersecurity insurance and why you should have it.
Ooh.
It's a fun one. Super fun.
Yeah, why you should have it and what you should do to get it too, right?
That's right. There's requirements. So if you're a business and you most likely want to grow and you want to get new customers, if you're a little company and you want to do business with a larger company, typically they're going to ask you if you have cybersecurity insurance. And you may go down the rabbit hole of researching what's required for cybersecurity insurance. And the market's changed a lot, with ransomware and all these threats that are just rampant now with the issues that are happening in our world. The insurance providers were paying out a lot of money for claims for ransomware. So they've essentially raised the stakes. Multi-factor authentication, which we've talked about at MFA for a really long time now. They want to make sure that you have that in place. They want to make sure that you've got policies and procedures, all the stuff that we've been talking about. But they want proof. They want evidence, because if you can't provide the proof, they're not going to pay the claim. So in order for them to actually even insure your business, they ask you some questions on a cybersecurity insurance questionnaire, and they basically rate the risk profile of your business. So obviously, if you have a .com business and you're online, you're taking credit cards, or maybe you're doing custom development, different actions may have different risks associated with it. Maybe your business is small and you use a provider like Square or PayPal or something to take credit cards, and maybe your risk is pretty low. Or maybe you have more modern e-commerce company, for example, and you're taking more personal identifiable information from the public. So there's all these different questions that they'll ask you. But multi-factor authentication, or MFA, is that extra step, in addition to just a password. And it's a technology that's pretty commonplace now, and they want to see that you're using that in your business, and there's supporting evidence of that. There's different kinds of MFA, different providers provide it. The big websites like Google, Facebook, they have an MFA provided as options to access those resources. But what if you're a business and you want to incorporate that into your own systems? There's different ways to do that. Even with what's called virtual private networks or VPN technology, you can add MFA layer to that, which is highly recommended. So MFA is really the number one thing that cybersecurity insurance is looking for. Any questions about MFA for you guys?
Yeah. So what is it about MFA that makes it so popular with all of the insurance agencies?
It's kind of like your ATM card at the bank, right? So you have like something on your person in addition to you, like to get money. So in the case of MFA, or multi-factor authentication, so you've got a username and a password, and then you've got this extra layer now. And you can get MFA as a text message or a one-time passcode. It could go to SMS text message, which is not recommended anymore. There's also one-time passcodes that can be emailed to you. And then there's my favorite, which is either Google or Microsoft Authenticator. And then you can pair the Authenticator solution to a hardware token. And that's my favorite solution, a hardware token. We talked about Gatekeeper in the past. That's a popular one that we highly recommend, that we've negotiated a great bundle pricing for our clients on. So MFA is basically that added security layer in addition to just your general credentials. Because, let's face it, a lot of the popular websites and services, they've been breached already. There's a website called haveibeenpawned.com that aggregates all that data together. So a lot of the information, hopefully you guys listening are not using the same credentials or breached credentials somewhere, but you should be using a password manager, complex, unique passwords everywhere. But in addition, the insurance companies really like this MFA layer because it is an effective layer. It's certainly not a cure-all, and it's not the only thing that a business needs to have, but it is effective. So if your credentials are breached or you have a keylogger on your system and your passwords are compromised, you have that extra layer that's going to block the hacker out.
Yeah, I think it's kind of surprising the amount of people that come to us and say, hey, we need help getting cybersecurity insurance. And I think probably the first two questions that we ask is, okay, how many endpoints do you have? Or do you have an inventory of your devices? And most people are like, no. Or do you have like a system security plan or maybe even a network diagram? People are like, no.
A lot of small businesses, the owners usually running around multiple hats, right? So the last thing they want to think about is cybersecurity. But the reality is that with all of this technology at our fingertips, pretty much, it's, it can be used for good and for bad, right? Like look at hard drive sizes, for example. I don't know if anybody's bought a hard drive recently, but hard drive sizes are multiple terabytes in size. They're very large in size, right? It's not uncommon to get a computer with a couple of terabytes of storage. That's a lot of storage. So my point is that, back 10 years ago, where you still had the issue, right? The issue of somebody breaching into your system and stealing your or deleting your data or causing damage. But as time goes on and storage becomes cheaper, now the amount, or we'll use a bucket as an example. Your bucket is bigger, and it's going to do more damage nowadays than it would 10 years ago, if that makes sense. So like if you lose 2 terabytes, let's say 2 terabytes is kind of the average size of a data storage, and you're a small business owner, and you've got a 2 terabyte hard drive, and you got about half of that full of business stuff and intellectual property and sensitive customer information, in just a couple keystrokes, it's super easy for a hacker to either exfiltrate and steal the data or delete it, and then poof, it's all gone. Whereas, just years ago, the storage the risk is still there, don't get me wrong, but the amount of damage is less because the storage wasn't there. So my point is that it becomes more and more important to not only back up your data, protect it, make sure that it's off-site, have more mature policies, like Blake mentioned, a system security plan, policies, procedures, all of this maturity level for your organization is no longer optional. It's really essential, and supporting evidence of it is essential to get things like cybersecurity insurance. They don't want you to go on the internet and just go download policies and then just stick them in a folder that you're not going to read and then say, yeah, we got policies. That's not the point. The point is that you have to customize these policies. First, you have to write them, and we have templates on our websites, and we help with those functions. You need to customize them, and only that can be done by the business and the business owner or the C-levels and the stakeholders. A provider can't do that for you. That's part of your culture and part of your business. So they need to be customized, and then they need to be mapped over to what's called security control layers. And multi-factor authentication is one of many different kinds of security control layers.
Yeah. So I think what's important too to note is, I was just looking it up while you were talking. According to Microsoft, back in 2019, they said that MFA blocks 99.9% of hackers, or it can stop up to 99.9%, which that might be a little bit high, because if you think about it too, like over the years, hackers, they know about multi-factor authentication, MFA, and they are working on ways to get around it, right? So just because you have MFA does not mean that you are hack-proof, obviously, or just because you use it.
I think the stat was 90% or something, 90+% of breaches that occurred did not have MFA enabled. It doesn't stop.
I just looked it up, though. That's what I was just saying. Microsoft said 2019.
It's 2022.
I know, it's 3 years later. But the point is, it does stop a lot, but that, like you're saying, Craig and Blake, I mean, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you need to have in place, because you're still asking for it.
Yeah, we'll also look at it from the perspective of the hackers too. So if that stat is accurate, Erin, and the bar is really high for a hacker to get through, well, what are they're gonna evaluate next? They're gonna look at what type of MFA are you using. And if you're using SMS or text message MFA, now what they're going to do is they're going to try to do what's called a SIM swap attack or social engineering attack on your cell phone provider. So if they can somehow look through breaches and, maybe find out your phone number, they may be able to find out which provider, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, etc., that you're using. And now they're going to target and try to impersonate you calling that cell phone provider and say, oh man, I'm in another country. I don't have access to my phone, and they're going to try to become you and steal your identity. And what's scary is the statistics around how successful they are at doing this. So this is why we do not recommend SMS for an authentication method. We highly favor something like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, or more importantly, something like a gatekeeper with a hardware layer or a YubiKey or something like that in addition to the software. So what those devices do is they have an algorithm. They generate every minute or every so many seconds new PIN codes that are one-time usage. But you could also pair a special device called a YubiKey or a gatekeeper, which is a hardware token, in addition to that algorithm. So now you have to have that key fob on your person near you, in addition to the proper authenticator algorithm and the code, all in that time frame. So it makes it really difficult for a hacker to get through that layer. But again, it's still one layer. And like I said, if a hacker is going to find that, oh, this method, or you're using multi-factor, now they're going to go keep checking, your defenses to see where's the weak point. And look at what happened with the headlines. I mean, I think it was just a few months ago with Okta. Do you remember Okta?
I haven't heard about that one.
So Okta was, you ever log into a website, Blake, and it says login as Google?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's Okta's framework and technology. So there was a big breach around Okta. So my point is that the hackers, they know that people are starting to use different kinds of multi-factor now. And what's happening is a lot of vendors and companies and websites that you're frequenting, they're starting to require and mandate you set up multi-factor, especially cryptocurrency, buying Bitcoin, things like that. They require the user to set up multi-factor. Often, that's pretty commonplace now. But again, it's still just one layer.
Yeah, it does not completely protect you from hackers. So you just don't want to be lulled into a false sense of security. Just because you have one thing, even if it's a good thing, it's not enough, most likely.
Yeah.
It's all of these.
Yeah, well, that's why I've always said, that's why we built our own stack, and we have a 22 plus layer patented cyber safety stack or cybersecurity stack. And we're always looking to add to those layers. And it's the onion concept that I've talked about many times, where you never rely on one person, one technology, one layer. You always have these redundancies in place, and you just keep fortifying and adding layers. And before you know it, you've got all these layers, and you're just that most difficult company or person to hack. So the hackers move on to an easier target.
So what are some other requirements that you've noticed that insurance companies have for coverage?
Yeah, so they want to see, your policies and procedures. Specifically, they want to see, where does your data live? Is it on your hard drives, or are you putting it in the cloud? If it's in the cloud, they want to see supporting evidence of security control layers that the cloud provider may give you. For example, Amazon AWS or Google or Microsoft Azure. They all have these platforms, but you have to configure them properly to secure your data and your information, or maybe you're using those services for your customer information. The point is that you want to have supporting evidence that the controls are in place. They're looking for the different policies and procedures around disaster recovery, data backup, password complexity. Blake mentioned system security plan. All these different policies in place. They want to see they want to see the policy. They want to see evidence of the policy. They want to see culture that it's actually being adhered to. They want to see proof of security risk assessments. They want proof of penetration tests. So they want to see supporting evidence of these third-party checks on your company. And again, it's a risk question for them. If you're an average business owner and all this stuff sounds like Greek to you, then you're a high risk for that insurance company. So now you have to convince the insurance company why you're not a high risk. And if you can't answer some of these questions that we're talking about, then you need the help to get it done so that you become a lower risk. And it's not just the insurance companies that are going to be profiling you for risk. It's the companies and the vendors that you want to be doing business with. They are becoming more mature, and you as a vendor to them are a risk. And that's why as you grow your company and as you try to do business with larger companies that are more mature and more established, they're going to hit you with what's called a vendor security questionnaire, or VSQ, sometimes 400 or 500, 600 questions of all this deep due diligence into your workings of how you're safeguarding your customers' information and how you're safeguarding your data. And again, convincing them why you're a low risk and why they should do business with you.
I actually pulled up one of those VSQs right here because one of our clients paid us to do it. And I think it'd be pretty interesting to go over maybe some of the questions here, just to give an example of what Craig's talking about. First of all, it talks about, your antivirus. If you have antivirus, of course, super simple. If so, what's the antivirus? Do you use a firewall? If so, what is the firewall hardware, like the make, model, issue? Do you have 2FA enabled? Is it enabled on Windows? Is it enabled before accessing customer data? Do you use backup or cloud storage? If so, is it on-prem or cloud? Is it encrypted? Do you have drive encryption enabled? Do you use a VPN? If so, who issued the VPN and how it was encoded? Password security, do you have a password history? Do you enforce it? Is there a minimum of 8 characters? Yada, yada. Is the default login on the router enabled? Do you have a public SSID? Do you have a guest wireless network? Is it, do you have the TX range reduced of the router? Do you have WP enabled? I mean, gosh, and then of course it goes into, MSP type stuff. Like, do you have patch management? Do you have, when's the tune-up frequency of the computers? Do you have an SSP? Is it printed and readily available? Do the employees know where it is? Do you have, calling XYZ vendor a part of the plan? Do you go over training procedures, how to spot data theft, yada, yada, yada. Of course.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, like you've said before, Craig, we need a credit score, a cyber score. Like, how much easier would that make things for everybody? Not just, the companies, but also the insurance companies. I mean, it's just like, let's submit this score. I mean, it would make so much sense.
Oh, absolutely. It goes back, it really goes back to training, right? So that's why at compliancearmor.com, we launched our own university, and we're continuing to add content and curriculum to that, to make sure that our people that take our training are well educated on all these threats. They can confidently answer these questions that cybersecurity insurance providers, as well as their vendors and their prospects that they want to do business with, they know what they're talking about. And that's why we so highly recommend our training, or security awareness training. But it's not just training, it's drills and testing and, going through these exercises. What comes to mind is tabletop. Incident response tabletop, which can be adapted to really all these different things that we're talking about. But, like Blake was saying, your employees need to be on board too. So, if you're just a small business owner and you're, wearing all these different hats, and you're one guy or girl and you started your company from nothing, that's fantastic. And I commend you for doing that. But you need to really know what we're talking about in regards to cyber safety and cybersecurity. And you need to train yourself, get yourself up to speed, test yourself, score yourself. Like Erin said, I talked about this many months ago. We've adapted a methodology around the credit score for cyber. come to us. We're here to help you. We're not going to, hurt you. We want to show you how we can help grow your business by making you less of a risk. And, you become more attractive to the vendors. They want to do business with you because you're mature and you have the proof and the evidence for that. So it doesn't take long for, to have a quick, no obligation, no cost phone call with us. Just reach out, come to us. We'll score you instantly, ask you a few questions in an interview. And then obviously the next step from that is usually some more deep dive assessment. We have a proven 4 pillars assessment methodology that we've adapted for all different verticals and niches. And that's a paid assessment, but that's also a lot of work. That's where we're going deep into your company. We're asking all these questions that are similar to what Blake was rattling off. But we also go deeper into the handling and the workflows of your company. As a small business, or maybe you're a medium or large business, but you start small and you have to start somewhere. The point is that you might be using a lot of third parties and different kinds of software. Maybe you're using Google or Microsoft for email, excuse me, or maybe you're using QuickBooks or, all these different software systems. Well, from a compliance perspective and a cyber perspective, the more software and the more providers you use, the more complicated you become. So even though you might be 1, 2, maybe 3 people or a small company, if you're using 5 or 10 different software packages, you're complicated. And it takes more work and effort to get you in compliance and in alignment. But, going back on what Blake was saying, they want to know, you were talking about wireless, system security, IDs and transmission, and they want to make sure that you're looking at all these IT functions that help your business. Like I remember talking to a client, and one of the questions that we asked them was, do you have a network diagram that shows all of the cabling in the building and the network jacks that are plugged back into the patch panel and then back into your switch? And then, when we do an on-site penetration test and we try to plug in to maybe the conference room's network jack, and maybe the conference room's door is wide open and anybody can go in there and sit, is that jack live? If it's not behind a locked door, it shouldn't be live. So, there's different things that people don't think about that make it really easy for a bad actor to gain access or do bad things. We've had other situations where we've done forensics and helped folks figure out, how did they lose their intellectual property? And we found that there was exfiltration of data. And, you have to start somewhere. And my point is that this is very complicated information. It's hard for people to digest, and we're here to help people figure it all out. Any particular question that you've rattled off, Blake, that you want an answer to?
Not particular. I mean, obviously I've done these types of audits, but something that, I think is really important is what it takes for you to become insured by a cybersecurity insurance. Not only that, it differs from what an auditor is actually going to pry into. There's a huge variance, right?
Yeah.
Between those two things. So you can be insured by a cybersecurity insurance company, of course, once you make the appropriate steps. But just because, you get your cybersecurity insurance doesn't mean that you're compliant in all the areas you need to be compliant in.
That's a really good point. So what happened was, in the industry as a whole, it was not so difficult to get cybersecurity insurance. Small businesses, they'd fill out a form and then bam, they'd pay, their money and they'd have cybersecurity insurance. Well, then what happened was the insurance companies found that the businesses that were insured weren't doing anything or hardly anything for their cybersecurity. So then they would get hit with ransomware. And they would go through an interview process. The first thing the business owner would do would call their insurance company and say, "Oh, we got ransomware, we need you to pay. So we can get, the hackers want 2 Bitcoins or whatever it is. And we need our data, we got insurance, we need you to pay." So then what happens is the insurance company will interview you as the business owner and your IT person or IT team. And they'll go on these calls with you, and they'll have their legal experts on there too. And they'll start asking you questions about, okay, well, what happened? Did you click on a link in an email that was a phishing email? Was it business email compromise? So they're going to ask questions first, and then they're going to get into what's called digital forensics and discovery, where if you can't answer some of these questions, they may want to appoint a DFIR or digital forensics incident response team from the insurance provider, send them to your office and have them rip everything apart and do their investigation and try to figure out how did this happen. And the reality is it most often happens from social engineering, phishing emails, business email compromise. We've had countless cases that we've worked where, we'll talk about MFA again, the IT guy set up the organization with Google G Suites or Microsoft Office 365, and then the IT guy forgot to enable MFA. So the IT guy got tricked with a phishing email that looked like a Microsoft Office 365 administration page or something that came from Microsoft, or Google, whatever. He gave up or she gave up their credentials. Then, and I've said this before, whenever a breach happens, it doesn't mean that there's all these red flags and alarms that go off at that point in time. The guy did, or, in this particular case, it was a guy, so he had no clue that something wrong happened. It was months later when the hackers were spying on all the emails and they came across a wire transfer that was about to happen. That's when they stepped in and they said, no, the routing and the checking account number is this, not that. I said a mistake or whatever. And they registered the domain name with one letter difference in the law firm. Okay. So in this particular case, had they had MFA enabled on the Office 365 account, the hackers would have been unable to get in. It would have avoided, it was almost $750,000 that they lost due to wire fraud. This is an absolutely true case that happened. And this is just one of many. We've worked on so many others that's why insurance companies like MFA so much, because they feel like that, at least if you're protecting Google G Suites or Microsoft with MFA, they feel like they can get good protection. And it is good protection. However, the hackers are always becoming smarter and they're always working and looking for low-hanging fruit, right? So if they find that you do have MFA enabled, they're going to look down, okay, well, what do you not have in place? How good are your employees at social engineering? Like I said, we talked about the SIM swap attack. Can we hack the CEO or C-level and get, break into their phone and get their MFA, their codes that way and take over their account? It's all these different other things that hackers can do. And, you mentioned antivirus. It's a common question on the form. Antivirus, yeah, you have to have it. It's 5% effective, so it's not really very effective anymore, but it is still a layer, and you still need to have it. And by the way, if you answer some of these questions that Blake rattled off, and the way you answer the question is kind of strange, meaning you list a firewall that's not really common, or you list a VPN, or the way that you answer some of the questions are not like common brand names, and they're going to throw a red flag and they're going to, get scrutinized.
Yeah. So that eBay firewall that you purchased for your company. No, it's not something that I've heard of too. And I was talking about this with another client, but just because you have cybersecurity insurance obviously doesn't mean you're compliant, but there is contingency that states in the insurance clause that you are compliant. And so obviously if a breach occurs or something and obviously there's evidence that is unraveled that you aren't compliant, then what do you think is going to happen?
Well, they're not going to pay the claim. Yeah. I mean, think about it this way. The insurance companies are playing it by the numbers, right? They're making their decisions of risk based on risk and decision making around risk. If you're attesting that you're doing all this stuff that the cybersecurity insurance is asking for, if you're saying, yeah, we're doing all that, if you're lying and you're filling that form just to get the insurance, the point is that, yeah, you might have got the insurance in the application, but you're not getting the protection and the claim to be paid at the time of a breach if you don't have all of your evidence and proof that you've answered all those questions truthfully. And that's really the proof and the bottom line there. So if you're not doing the risk assessments and you're not doing all the stuff that we've talked about, and you're just lying on the application just to get the insurance, that's a recipe for disaster. And the same thing like with the firewall example, if you go to Best Buy or you go somewhere and you buy a home router or a home firewall and you stick it in your business, that's not a business level piece of equipment, and it's not meant to be, protecting your organization. So if they, think about it. If the insurance company goes through all the stuff of how you answered it and they find, oh, you're using a Linksys or a TP-Link router and you have 50 employees, that thing costs $75. That's a red flag. So my point is, all they have to do is, one of these things that you did wrong, and you're not getting a payout. You're not getting the claim. It's going to be on your check writing ability to pay yourself out of the situation. And sometimes you could pay the hackers and, give them the 2 Bitcoin or whatever they're asking. But oftentimes they won't give you the key back and they won't give you your data back in that situation either. And other times where you could try to negotiate with the hackers, maybe they know, well, not maybe, they know that you've negotiated with them. They know that they hit you, and then they try to hit you again in a few months or a few weeks to see if you've actually made any changes to make it harder for them to hit you again. So my point is, it's a game for them and it's a job for them. They're just trying to get money and get paid. And if you make it easy for them,
they'll snatch it up.
That's right. They just clean you out and
snatch that up. Just
yeah.
Take that opportunity and grab at it. And so it was just making me think, Craig, when you're talking about basically the insurance company will gladly take your money, even if you lie to them, but they will not give you the money.
That's right.
So you're basically like, if you're lying to them and you get hacked, you're screwed. Like they've got like digital forensics. They can tell if you're lying or being dishonest. And, maybe it's possible they won't completely not give you money or it won't completely protect you, but it's likely you won't get the full amount that you're requesting, or it's just not a good idea.
It's the same thing that happens when you get in a car accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get in a car accident, an auditor comes out and sees like what happened, like who's at fault, yada yada yada. Not quite the exact same for cybersecurity insurance, from my understanding. They prove that there is some where the they're looking for where the liability falls.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, like with fires too, like you have a fire, they're going to, if you set your own house on fire, they're probably going to find out.
Well, it's really with everything. And we talked about this with defense industrial based contractors too. It's really with everything. It's, they ask you all these questions, and I'm not saying that you're going to lie or do anything like, but there are people that do. But what I am saying is, they're asking all these questions, and some things you may be doing proper, you may be doing correctly, and they're going to give you partial credit for that. And their answer in partial credit is dollars. They're just going to give you very few dollars. And we as a provider at a cybersecurity organization, we want to get you maximum payout on a claim. God forbid you did have a breach. And more importantly, we want to protect you from that breach in the first place, so you don't have to rely on insurance companies. But we've been doing this well over 20 years now, and I've actually been told by various organizations that they're not going to do all of the stuff that we recommended because they think it's too expensive, and that they'll just get the cybersecurity insurance. And, back 10, 15 years ago, when they were, people were saying that to me, maybe they were getting payout if they did get a breach. The other thing I hear commonly is, oh, I've never had a breach before. Why should I have to pay for all this stuff if I've never had a breach? Well, the reality of that situation is you're saying you never had a breach, but if you don't have all your stuff in place and you don't have the evidence to prevent a breach, how can you be confident that you have everything in place to detect a breach? How do you know you weren't already infiltrated? And the only way to know that is, again, to have a forensic firm, doing a deep analysis to figure out, what do you have in place and what your maturity level is.
It's like life insurance companies too, or like, if you're some high net worth individual or something and they're putting together a life insurance policy on you and they ask you about like your behavior.
Yep.
Are you into jet skiing? Are you into skydiving? Are you into swimming with sharks in the Cayman Islands?
Yeah, high risk behaviors, right?
That's what a lot of businesses do, but they don't even know.
That's right.
Yeah, good point.
So that's where we go back to our methodology that we've put together around cyberscore and risk. It's all risk question. If you're swimming with sharks, you're risky. So we want to make your business secure. And we want to help you do that as efficiently and most affordably as possible. And all this stuff, folks, doesn't all cost a ton of money to do. You'll actually be surprised at how affordable a lot of it is and how effective some of these affordable solutions are. But it's a like I said before, it's a methodology that we've come up with that helps you put all this together, make sense of it, and give you the evidence that you need should a vendor, third party, or cybersecurity insurance provider request it. You have it at your fingertips, and you're able to share all of the good stuff that you're doing to protect yourself, your organization, as well as your clients. And, it's not just about cybersecurity insurance. There's also data breach laws that are in almost all of the states. There's new laws being written every day. There's new regulations being put forth. There was a new regulation in January for CPAs and bookkeepers, around sensitive information. So if you're thinking, well, my business doesn't really handle sensitive information, most likely it does in some way, shape, or form. If you're doing business with a vendor and you've got sales receipts or identifiable information on what did they buy and just the common information, once you start asking and pinpointing, well, who bought it, first name, last name, email, company name, phone number, all these fields, they now zero in from a mass to an individual corporation or an individual. And now you've got sensitive personal identifiable information, or PII. If you're in medical, you might have patient health information, or PHI. So my point is that it's very rare, especially now, to have any kind of business that's not dealing with something that's sensitive. It very quickly can go from non-sensitive to sensitive in record speed.
I actually have one of these sensitivity charts up here. This might be a good segue. But so in this example, it says the information types and the impact if stolen, right? So obviously we have customer contact information. That's actually, it says impact medium, right? And obviously this is super vague, right? Billing information, we already know that one is pretty high. Or personal information, such as name, phone number, email. Like that stuff's already out there. Like it's on your Facebook, it's on your LinkedIn, yada yada yada, right? But of course they have likelihoods, right? So I mean, there's so much stuff. I mean, gosh, if you're in HIPAA, if you're subject to HIPAA and you have social security numbers or something, or, you're filing claims and you require some, it's just head is exploding. I can't say anything.
Look at it from a vendor perspective. Let's use your cell phone provider, for example. You probably one day you wanted to buy a cell phone. So maybe you bought an Apple iPhone. So maybe you went to the Apple store and you signed up. Well, what did you give them? You gave them your name, your first name, last name, your address. You gave them personal identifiable information to identify you, right? But a lot of the information that you filled on that form, you've most likely filled it other places too. So how do you then prove that you're who you say you are? They may ask for a driver's license. They may ask for, like Blake said, a social security number. Well, what if the driver's license, the information has been out there or pieced together? People make fake IDs all the time. My point is that it's becoming more difficult to prove that you're who you say you are. So one common thing that on the topic of cell phone providers, one common thing that it's recommended that you do is you call into your provider and you ask the provider to generate a unique PIN number to associate with your account that you don't use anywhere else on any other system. So that PIN number allows you to, again, have an extra layer to identify yourself. But if you think about it, really, unless you're calling, like say you have a working device and you call support, like AT&T, for example, and you're calling from the device that's registered on your account, it's pretty easy for them to detect that you're calling from that device. So that makes it easier for them to identify, okay, well, that's probably you. But let's say you lost that device, or you're a bad actor and you're trying to steal somebody's identity and you use a different device and you say, well, I'm traveling, I'm in a different country. Again, they're asking you the same questions that you filled out on the form from the very beginning that nowadays are pretty easy to answer based on current breach statistics. So my point is, unless you call your provider and add the PIN number and add some of these extra layers, then it's very, very easy to be hacked. I talked about that with even health insurance too. I wrote about that in my book on HIPAA. There was a guy that I wrote about who had his identity stolen, and the health insurance companies were going after him to pay the surgery that he never had. And he just kept getting bombarded with all these collection calls. And he finally went up to the hospital and he pulled up his shirt and he said, look, if I've had a surgery, I would have a scar, on my chest, and I have no scar. So my point is that they were going after him for, I can't remember if it was 50 or 100,000, a huge surgery, and his whole identity got stolen. And that's what the hackers want. They want to be able to steal your identity, steal your credit, to do these things like get surgeries or get money from you. But, until the main system is upgraded and we move beyond the social security number, we as individuals and consumers and businesses, we need to take this into our own hands from a cyber and compliance perspective and really work hard on the training and the testing and the drills, and work with our vendors to make sure that, we know who we're doing business with and we trust them to protect the information just like we would, and, make it so that we have these extra layers in place.
I was actually scrolling down this security questionnaire, and one thing that stuck out, and another question is, do you have personal email and business email on the same device? That question, and if you do, how are they segmented?
Yeah, so if you've got an iPhone or a Droid device, super easy to add multiple accounts, and I would say most people add their personal and their work email. But now let's take this a step further. If you're a business owner and, like with COVID, for example, a lot of people working from home, are you issuing out corporate-owned devices to your remote workers, or are you allowing your workers to use their own device? If you're allowing them to use their own device, that's called Bring Your Own Device, or BYOD, and there's a policy that you need to have in place that they sign off on that allows you as the organization owner to use their device for work purpose. If you don't have that, then there's a violation there. And there's also not just a violation, but there's a problem that could occur in a dispute situation, especially when trying to protect sensitive information. Because think about it, if you've got a remote worker and they have an outdated phone that's not supported anymore, can't get the latest patches and updates, well, that is now a window and a door that's open for a breach into your company.
That's exactly it. To be most secure, think about cornering yourself, right? And having scanning the room, if you're in the center of a room, something may come behind you, if we're talking military logistics or something, some attackers may come behind you. But if you're in the corner of a room, they talk about that in military training and how to clear a room. You start off with the furthest wall to the left and then work your way into the center of the room. But, and it's such a good point that we never talk about is, of course, you have both those doors open. You may check your personal email and then click on a link that Sally, sent you, and then it opens the door for a hacker, but you have your work email on the same device or vice versa, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why it's so important and that's well said. That's why it's so important, though, to embrace what's called zero trust technologies, which is what encompasses most of our 22 plus layer stack. It's not trusting, it's technology that doesn't rely on the provider to be trusted. So in this case, we use an encrypted data, encrypted email system that's passwordless. The provider, they can't get into our emails, using things like Signal and WhatsApp and end-to-end encrypted solutions like that. The provider, if you called signal.org and said, well, I can't get into my Signal account, that's on you. It's zero trust. You're done. You can't get into that they can't get into that information. But there's good that comes about from that. Now you've made it harder for hackers to get into it. But there's also great responsibility that comes along with that too. You as the user or business owner have a larger responsibility now to make sure that you have your recovery keys and your information in order, because if you don't, there's no third party that can help you in that situation, much like a bank would back in the day.
We have in our podcast topics, how to transition your business into a zero trust framework. That one's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do that one next Monday.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was a Craig one.
Yeah. We talked about it. We're like, we'll leave that with Craig.
Yeah. Which podcasts are Craig podcasts and which one are not Craig podcasts?
Exactly.
Zero trust is the future.
Yep.
But every business, like a small percentage, actually understands what zero trust is and actually has it implemented, like maybe like 2% or 3% of businesses.
Well, it's like I was saying before, I'm a big believer and proponent in zero trust, and that's why we embrace it and we add it to our stack layers. But it comes back to the business owner or the person too. With those technologies, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So if you are just confused about all this, just call us and reach out and we'll help you. Like Erin said, we'll give you that score, we'll interview you, quick conversation, no cost or obligation. And then if there's a fit, we'll certainly help you with our more in-depth methodology around our 4 pillars. But if we decide to go through that journey together, which is always an eye-opening, fun experience, my point is that you have a partner, which is Petronella Technology Group, to lean on that has the answers for each of these solutions that are tailored to each individual type business. But going back to employees and more personnel and staff and training, as you grow your company and you have more people that help you get the job or jobs done, all of those people now are risk vectors into your breach profile, because if one untrained employee gives the keys to the bad guys, well, that could cause a breach for the whole organization. So that's why training is so essential and the drills are so essential. And, technology, especially zero trust technology, is great, and it helps solve some of the trust issues with certain vendors. But there's still, like I said, there's more training and legwork and responsibility that you can't outsource. So there's kind of this balancing act, right? We talked earlier about risk profiling for that your organization and yourself. When you buy cyber insurance, for example, you don't want to just buy it from the cheapest provider of cybersecurity insurance. You also want to buy it from a provider that's well known and respected. And it's the same thing with other companies and other solutions that you use. There might be a brand new solution and it might be great, but if it's a high risk, high profile company that doesn't have supporting evidence of certain security standards, then you may want to keep shopping, because you need to make sure that you're doing business and who you're trusting has been vetted and tested. And that's so important nowadays, especially with all the breaches like SolarWinds. And, think about like your iPhone or your Droid device, how many apps you have on that thing, or how on your desktop computer that you use, whether it's Mac or PC. All of the companies and solutions that you purchase, whether it be from Microsoft or Apple, every single one of them has a risk. And it only takes one of them to become unpatched and breached to breach you. And you have to think about, that's where I was talking about these tabletop exercises. You have to plan these fictitious events in advance and proactively go through them, much like a military drill or a fire drill. If you never do the fire drill, then when something happens, because it will happen, when something happens in the future, how are you going to be best prepared?
Something that I was just thinking about as you were talking about this, and, from experience working here for, I think, going on 3 years now, a lot of people come to, I think maybe a lot of people, there's two different types of customers that come to us. There's ones that submit something to us, and then, we reach out to them and they never answer our call, right?
Yep.
Or the people that are super engaged, like, hey, like, let's get going, like, like, let's do it now. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I think the first customer, or the people that reach out to us that maybe listen to our podcast or put together or look at the resources we put together, they may be fearful in some type of way, where they say, hey, like, I was listening to the podcast and
and they were talking about these questions. I don't know how to answer these. I don't know what SSP is. I've heard of it. So I think I have to have it. Like all these things where they start burying themselves with a fear, and then they don't reach out to us, or they don't engage with us because they're scared because of their maturity, right? Their cyber maturity level. They're scared that it makes them vulnerable in some type of, and it does make you vulnerable to the outside, but not the inside. Like us, if you reach out to us, it's not like we're, I don't even think ethically, and this is a correct question, but I don't even think ethically we can be a whistleblower because we are a service provider.
Yeah, whenever somebody reaches out to us, we always have confidentiality, and we do NDAs and things like that. So your conversations are safe and secure with us. One of the first steps that we usually do on an intake is we move you from insecure email to an encrypted data and an encrypted email solution that we use. So we have those systems in place to protect not only ourselves but our clients. And I understand that a lot of this is complicated stuff. It is kind of put into the fear mindset, but that's just kind of the world we live in now. And I think the bottom line, though, is that we're the good guys. We're here to help you. We've been doing this for a really, really long time. We have the most efficient path forward. And we don't just say that, but we back everything up that we do with supporting evidence. And the evidence that we provide is all truthful because we pass audits. So my point is that we're here to help you wherever you are on the journey, and it doesn't have to be embarrassing or anything like that. We don't make any judgments on anyone. We just want to we want to learn more about you and your company so that we can prescribe the right solution. And unfortunately, with every business and every person being different, there's no commercial off-the-shelf solution that, is inexpensive. It just doesn't work that way. That's why we have our first step is a free phone call. There's no cost or obligation, just to kind of get to know one another, learn a little bit about your situation. But then after that, it's consulting, and then we help you because we're working hard for you and in your best interest to prescribe that right solution. And that is a lot of work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it's not. But, like I said, if you listen to our podcast and you try to do so as much as you can on your own, and what I mean by that is, you try to organize your business and you try to maybe reduce some of the third parties that you work with, and ask your third parties for evidence of compliance and security on your behalf. How are they keeping your information safe and secure? What reports and evidence can they give you? If you do some of this due diligence on your own, that's okay. That's good. That's I commend that, and that makes our job easier if we choose to work together in the future.
I know we like to use cybersecurity insurance and compare it to doctors and healthcare and general practice and stuff like that. But, Craig is saying, like, it's such a valid point. Like, and the comparison here that I'm thinking about is you've got two different types of people. People that go to the doctor when they're in pain, right? Or they feel like they're dying. And then it's not too late to save you.
That's right.
If their doctor puts them on a meal plan, they're following that meal plan and they're proactive. And I mean, those are the two people, right? And there's just, we're split. Humankind is split into those two different types of groups, right?
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's hard to move somebody from one group into the other group unless something life-changing or dramatic happens.
It's usually an event that takes place, like when you buy life insurance. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I'm going to just buy $1 million of life insurance. It's usually some family member or some friend that maybe you lost, and now it makes you kind of think about that. It's the same thing with our world in cyber and compliance. Maybe you're trying to do business with a bigger company, and that bigger company has more maturity level in regards to cyber than you do, and they're asking these vendor security questions, and they're asking, maybe they have a SOC 2 Type 2 or an ISO 27001 report, or they're asking questions around that. And maybe you've never seen these questions before. So you're like, well, what is that? And you do kind of your own research on it. My point is that there's some event that happens. So at some point in your journey, you hit the event, and that event usually puts you on the search to get help or to try to do something on your own. And if you can't do it, then to get help. It's the same thing like Blake was saying, whether it's diet, exercise, or health, nobody wants to face the reality that, you may get sick or you may have an illness one day. But if you eat right and you eat your vegetables and you do all the best that you can do for preventative, it's proven to, help you live longer. So it's the same concept with cyber and compliance. If you maintain your systems and your endpoints and your equipment, and you don't use technology that's out of date or unable to be patched, and you're doing all the firmware updates and the patches every Tuesday or whenever they come out, and you're updating everything, and you're going through all the due diligence on prevention, and you're doing the security risk assessment, the more of this stuff that you're doing on a preventative level, yes, it all takes time and it all takes money. However, it's a fraction of the cost of doing nothing and then trying to hurry up and rush to do everything overnight. Because like I said before, with the Defense Industrial Base or the DIB, with the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification or the new CMMC 2.0 that's coming up, all those folks that are sitting on the sidelines thinking, oh, they're not going to catch me, we've been doing DFARS and NIST compliance and we've attested. And once we get through a lot of the folks that are subject to DFARS and NIST compliance, and we ask them a few questions, we very quickly know the truth of are they compliant or not. And very rarely, sadly to say, are they even close to being compliant. So my point is that don't be the guy on the sidelines or the girl on the sidelines. Take action now. Give us a call, reach out to us, start your journey. Let us help you, at least show you the way and the journey of how to move forward at the most efficient way possible.
Yes, be proactive.
It only takes one thing that you can do is to start now and to take action. Everybody starts in the same exact place as you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're all going to different destinations, but you're never going to get there unless you have the intent on going or doing or anything, right? That's just life principle 101, business motivation coach 101. You have to get up and take action.
If you don't take a step, you're never going to get there.
That's right.
Being fearful is not an option anymore. If it comes back down to your livelihood or your future or taking care of your family or being a provider to the people that you care about and love, it's the same thing. We refer it back to health again. If the doctor says, oh, you have high cholesterol, and you've got kids or, a wife or something, and you want to spend the next 50 years with them, what do you got to do?
Right.
Lower that cholesterol. And
it's definitely not, I'm not saying that it's an easy path either, exercise or whatever it is change is never easy, right? But I will say that with the experience and the team that we have put in place, we do make it as painless as possible. And the other thing I'll say is the people that follow our program, they get results. And I have personally helped clients get the big company that they wanted to do business with that they never could have imagined they would have been able to show enough evidence and red tape to be able to get through all their compliance. We did it. We got them that huge client that they were after. So the other thing that I just wanted to say before we end our podcast today is that, like Blake said, everybody has to start somewhere. We've all been there, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And what I mean by that is, yeah, it's going to take work. There's going to be work that you're going to have to do, each and every one of you. But we make it as easy as possible. Like with our policy program, we've got 80% of that work done. We've literally left the answers that we do not have answers to because they're specific to your organization or to you. So we work through coaching with that to help you along and get that done. But my point is, everybody needs goals too, right? So maybe your goal is to get that bigger client, to make that extra money or get that extra revenue in. And the reality of the situation is this stuff is not crazy. Is it cost money? Absolutely. Is it millions of dollars? Absolutely not. I mean, the point is that we help you get that client that you're after. And then it becomes easier after, just like exercise, once you get into a routine, it becomes easier. And now guess what? You thought that you wanted that client that you put as your goal. Now you're getting 2-3 clients just like them, and your business is exploding. So if you want to grow your business and you want to not be a statistic and not just go out of business because of all the bad stuff happening, and you want to be an outlier and basically pick who you do business with, then you need to call us.
Cybersecurity is not a sunk cost. It does not have to be a sunk cost. I think a lot of people think of it as something that they just have to do. And they think like, oh, what a waste of money. But I mean, really, if you think about it, especially if you're going after a contract or the insurance or whatever, you're going to be ahead of the game if you become cybersecurity compliant. So you're going to be ahead of your competition. You're going to have a competitive advantage. And it's not just a sunk cost. It's not just like I'm throwing money out the window. Why am I doing this? And so, I could be paying a hacker or whatever. But it really does, like you were saying, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yep.
There is a bright spot to all of this. And so not only are you securing your data, your client's data, but you're also giving your company a competitive advantage.
That's exactly right. And, we're that easy button. I've said this many, many times, but it's true. If you listen to our advice and you take what we're saying to heart and you do what we say, you're not going to get hacked. If you do everything, you do the workout, you do the program, you're going to see results. And it's the same thing. If you follow our advice and you follow our program, the likelihood of you getting hacked is so small. I mean, is it possible? Yes. But that's just because we're all humans. But my point is that we could put everything perfectly in place for you around policies, procedures, security controls. We could do all the tests, all the drills. We can give you the recipe that we know is proven and that works. And for those over the past 20 plus years in doing this, the ones that listen, I could tell you with 100% certainty, the ones that listen and follow our program, they don't get hacked. They don't get hacked because they have so many layers in place that the hackers move on to easier targets. And that's absolutely true. And that's what we want to build for your business and for yourselves, not just at a business level, but at a personal level too. People get hacked. So depending on where you are, if you're working from home or you want to start that new business, you have to take cybersecurity as an investment. It's part of the cost of your operation. It needs to be factored into that. I'm not saying you need to go and take out millions of dollars in loans to do it the right way. But I am saying that there is a process that we've developed and it is proven.
In one of our previous podcasts, I don't think you were on it, Craig, we talked about budgeting for cybersecurity. I think Erin's probably going to be like, yeah, I was getting ready to go there because we vibe off each other like that.
I was going to say, don't be a fruit, be an onion.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that. We'll have to bring, I don't even know if Craig's heard that one yet.
No.
But no, in one of these previous podcasts, we mentioned anywhere from 6 to 12, I think it's 6 to 12 or 6 to 14% of your revenue should be going towards cybersecurity.
And the average is like 0.6.
The average is 0.6, but depends on the space that you're in.
Well, not only does it depend on the space, but it depends on where you are in the journey. So like if you're just starting out, 16% or whatever you said is not going to be enough to just start out, right? It might need to be more than that. Because remember, we're building a foundation, right? And the foundation that we build that's custom, it's like a custom home built specifically for your requirements and for your business and where you are right now. To build that home oftentimes has a minimum effective foundation or a minimum effective dose, right? So whether you're one person or 1,000 people, you still have to have a strong foundation. Now, if you have 1,000-person custom company or 10,000, you're going to need bigger stuff, right? And that's okay. But my point is that the statistics that you guys were saying, that's in your maintenance mode. So after all the work is done and you're moving along and you have the evidence for all the stuff that we've been talking about, then you should be, yes, 15, 16, maybe 20%, depending on the risk category of your business model. That's going to depend on how your percentages should be. But the reality of the situation is right now, I think Erin said 0.6%. That's just woefully too low. That's not going to get you very far. It's just going to take forever. And then by the time you even make any traction or progress, bad things will probably happen already. So the point is that it really depends, and it's different for everyone. But be prepared if you have nothing and you know that you don't have anything, or maybe you have contracts and you thought that you didn't really understand what NIST and DFARS compliance is, or whatever mandates or regulations you're subject to. If the bottom line is, if you don't have much in place, be prepared to spend, fair market value and reasonable price to build out your foundation and then put you in that maintenance mode. And again, it's not a sunk cost. It is an investment in your business. And it's also your obligation really nowadays, not only for the law, but to ethically protect yourselves and your customers, because the statistics are against you. If you do nothing, you will, it's a fact, you will get breached. It may not be tomorrow, but some point, if you do nothing, you're most likely going to get breached. And when you do, it's game over. So all that work that you think that you might be saving by, I didn't have to pay for that, or I sidestepped that one, how bad would it be to wake up and then find out, oh crap, I just lost all my stuff due to ransomware and I should have just done this or whatever. The point is that we're here to help you be proactive and preventative and be reasonable with budgets and realistic that, hey, some of this stuff does cost money, but you don't want to, use that $59 router because of all the issues with that layer, and you never want to run your whole company on an unstable foundation. If you want to do it right, we're the ones to call.
Yeah. Not only that too, saying you didn't know, or that I didn't know, I wasn't supposed to, I didn't know I was supposed to do this. That doesn't get you off the hook.
That's right.
Doesn't stop the hackers. The hackers don't care. And neither does the government.
It doesn't get you out of timeout. And then we should probably, Craig, our quote, I'll let you tell him.
No, please.
Don't be a low-hanging fruit, be a cybersecurity onion.
So if the hacker's trying to cut into your onion, they're going to cry and go away. Right?
That's right. That's great.
But if a hacker tries to eat a fruit, it's going to be like, let me stay here all day and just eat off of your tree.
That's right.
Every layer. You cry through every layer.
Be an onion. Be an onion, y'all.
Yeah, it just came to us one day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good.
We've been saying it ever since.
That's awesome.
At least on the podcast.
Probably to each other too.
But it's so true, though. I mean, you got to invest in yourself. You got to invest in your company, not just for the laws and the regulations, but for yourselves. I mean, it's truthfully going to make you more money. It's going to make you more secure, more stable. It's going to give you the foundation to support growth. You're going to increase your revenue by investing in cybersecurity and compliance with PTG.
And think about it too. Would you prefer to go with a business that has strong cybersecurity or weak cybersecurity?
Yeah.
Obviously, strong cybersecurity. So your customers want strong cybersecurity as well. I can say words, I promise. But you could even, that's something that you could even use if you do have strong cybersecurity layers in place. That's something that you can use even as marketing if you wanted to. Like, hey, we take care of you, unlike our competitors. So there's lots of ways you can spin it.
Yeah, use it as a competitive and marketing advantage. Once if you do the big jobs like the SOC 2 Type 2 or the CMMC or HIPAA compliance, showcase that work. I'm not saying share those reports, but at least tell your clients, look, we take your information seriously and we keep it secure. Here's the evidence, the proof, everything that we say and we do as part of our culture at Petronella Technology Group is we support everything with third-party evidence. We vet and test. We have a whole research and development department. So we're that catalyst. We can get you there. Even if you have nothing, we can get you there to where you need to be, custom tailored. And, sometimes I can't give exact timeframes because every business is different. Sometimes in just 3 to 6 months, though, we can make a huge amount of progress and build a strong foundation that we can keep building on and get you on the road to getting more clients.
Absolutely. Craig, I'm glad you were able to join us today. It's always great when you're on. You have so much knowledge. It's just, I love picking your brain. So
absolutely.
Yeah, we got to save all of our really juicy topics for the ones that Craig comes in on. We could talk about the other silly stuff, but we got to save our hard.
I mean, cyber insurance is really important.
Everybody should have cybersecurity insurance. I mean, even us, we have cybersecurity insurance. we're not perfect. We like onions, and we definitely, eat our onions and we do our exercise, but we're human too, right? And we have followed our own advice. We eat our own dog food, so to say, and we've gone through our due diligence with our vendors, but there's still, every business has risks, right? So every business needs cybersecurity insurance. But here's the most important reality message around that. When we buy as a company cybersecurity insurance, we're buying it as a worst case scenario. Our intention is, and our hope is, to never ever have to use it. We're not using it as a substitute for doing the right thing. And we're always going to keep adding to our stack and, maybe replacing things in our stack as things become more modern and driven by AI and, artificial intelligence and quantum and everything else. My point is that we're always using research and development to make sure that we have best of breed technologies in place and we've got the best people in place, and we're constantly testing across people, process, and technology. But every single business, every consumer needs to have insurance. It's very, very vital and important. And I just don't see how in our climate with, it being, I can't believe it's May of 2022, I don't see how any business cannot have cyber insurance. I mean, that would be like a deal breaker immediately. Like if I did business with somebody and I found out they didn't have cyber insurance, that tells me that they're not taking cybersecurity important and seriously enough, that they don't really care enough to have that. I mean, that's like the most minimum thing nowadays to have in place. But again, the requirements for cybersecurity insurance, they are getting more difficult. However, we have the recipe and the proven methodology to get and make sure that you can qualify and get that cybersecurity insurance. But we don't stop there is the point. Like we talk about NIST 800-171 and DFARS and CMMC, and we talk about the 110 practices, right? Cybersecurity insurance may, if we had to map it over, maybe like 20, 30 points worth of those practices. We're not going to stop there and say, oh, okay, you got enough to get cyber insurance, you're done. That's not how we work. We're going to try to make you that most awful tasting onion as possible and the most layers in place. We want to make sure that a hacker spits you out and moves on. So we're not going to stop at just 30 practices, but we're also going to work with you on your budget too. I understand that not every business can put in place, 110, but it also depends again on what is your business model. If you're a DIB contractor or a defense industrial based contractor, you have to have 110. And if you're not going to get 110 and you don't have the buy-in to do that, well, then you should probably reevaluate your business model, because that's been in place for over 5 years. And it's, the point is that you don't have much choice there. You have to show evidence of all of that. But if you're, a different kind of business that isn't maybe currently as regulated as much, maybe you could afford to not go into 110 and at least do half or something like that. But the point is to always aim high. Treat all of this as investments in your company. Even if you are a little business and you don't do a lot in the regulated space, it's still not a bad idea to go after 110 practices if you could afford to do so. And there are affordable ways to do so.
Our services are tax write-offs.
Yeah, that's true. OpEx expenses, operating expenses. That's right.
Not only that, we have some areas of compliance that people have reached out to us, and you actually get tax credits in some areas.
Yeah, we're not financial advisors or CPAs, so check with your professional for sure. But I do know that I've heard of Section 179 for hardware purchases that we may recommend that may fall into that category on the cyber stack side of things. New firewalls, XDR appliances, different kinds of things like that may fall into that Section 179 category. The obviously cloud services, cyber services that we provide, or SOC services, those are all typically operating expense services. But again, check with your tax and your local professional on that, because we're not financial advisors. But yeah, good point.
It used to be, but not anymore. Just FYI.
All right, guys. Well, I got to wrap up, but got any other questions on cybersecurity insurance for today?
Not currently.
No, I think we should for next Monday, which maybe the how to transition into
Zero trust.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I think that's a great one for next Monday.
Yeah, we could talk more about enclaves and how enclaves are really a great effective way to help a business do a lot of the stuff that we're saying affordably. A lot of our competition sadly is ripping people off and selling them just a mixed bag of goods that we don't operate that way. I mean, we have a reputation to uphold. We win awards and kudos, and we're on the news all the time, and we work hard to get there. We're not saying that out of arrogance or to gloat. We're saying that because we wake up every day. We want to do the right thing. We want to help people, and enclaves will save you guys tons and tons of money. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars to build out secure enclaves to get all this stuff in order for you. And you just really need to reach out to us and get started with that.
I can hear the listeners Googling now. Enclaves. What is an enclave?
What is an enclave? We'll tell you on next Monday. And speaking of other podcasts too, I cannot wait for Wednesday. We're going to do the first podcast with AI and marketing. So if you are interested in more abstract, fun, like kind of stream of consciousness, the intuitive, like big abstract, I guess is really the way to put it. Don't forget to tune in to the AI podcast. We get into less practical, more abstract ideas, the future of cybersecurity, the future of marketing. It's going to be fun if you like that kind of thing. If you don't, obviously, stick to this podcast, but check it out.
Cool.
I've got some ideas for those in our list here that I think would be awesome.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. I love doing these, though, obviously. So
awesome. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. See you guys later.
Thanks. All right.
Thanks for listening to the Cybersecurity and Compliance Podcast with Craig Petronella. For other episodes and more information, visit petronellatech.com. Also visit our other websites, compliancearmor.com and blockchainsecurity.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and stay secure.